Evening, everyone. Welcome back. Third one of the day. Boom. Live. Feed me up, baby. As you can tell, I may be a tad on the board side with the lockdown, but RC has saved the day and the addict in me. Uh, Welcome along. Glad you can make it. We're going to strip down the Schumacher Eclipse 3. As I would do before any race meeting. Next time I'm going to run this car will be at MB Models for the first round of the LMP Race Series, sponsored by the Online Podcast. So this would be a good opportunity to walk you through what I do and get it down on a video. So first things first, I will usually strip the old wheels off. I've got my oils on the side here, which is pretty much where I'm going to start the weekend, which will be 5k on the front. I'm going to go 60k down the middle, and then I will have 5k on the side, and I'll probably start on a black maybe silver side screen, and then as the grip, well, the grip will probably be there to start with, but just to give myself a bit of a chance to ease my way in, I'll then work up through the springs, maybe play with a bit of rear droop. That's about it, really. It's a very simple car to run, and it's really quite successful, as we all know, and that's part of the attraction for many. But also, it's something that I miss getting involved with, extra bits, changes, etc. Hence the X-ray and what that might offer me. So I'll take the motor out, because this is a full strip and rebuild, so I want to get that out of the way. Then I'll start to move on to the rear of the car. If you've got any questions along the way, feel free to ask them. Happy to bring you into the conversation. If we go off topic, that's fine too, but if I'll point out what I'm doing along the way as we go. And then I've taken the 4 bolts off here. Well, sorry, 6 bolts off. So these two, and then I'll unscrew the damper at the front, and then all of that pulls off in one big chunk, which is really easy to then access the rear end of the car. So at this point, I always undo the bolts on the side links to the back here, using my finger to stop the other side of the bolt twisting. And then I will take the nut off the back. Some people will say measure it, etc., but don't really see the point of that. But if you know what you're setting, then you know what measurement it will be at, then it's good to go. And there she is. So it doesn't take really many screws. It's taken 6, 7, 8 bolts and a nut on the back ends off. And this is what I said in the video, that it's not that easy to be able to check whether this pod is flat, because you've got this rear brace here that's got some flat heads that sit above the rear of the pod, which stop you from being able to lay it flat on the deck and seeing if it's flat. So I don't see there's any reason why they wouldn't put countersunks here, which would then allow you to lay it down. You'd still have the front pivot that was would stop you from still being able to do that. But there we go. So take this off, take the axle out. And then at this point, I would take the rear pod off. Making sure that I am replacing the bolts as they came out, because there are different lengths as you go through here. I promise not to do too many lives tomorrow. Give you all a break from me. And so, why take it all apart? Well, whenever you get a new kit, I think it's always when it's all bolted together for the first time, it always feels like a nice place to be, doesn't it? And so that's what I like to feel, that the car's reset, got no pranes in it. I'm just going to use a brush just to take away all the tyre dust in the rear pod. I tend to try and get all the tyre dust off to start with. Don't use too much brake cleaner as I go, because I don't think there's too much point in that. And start to pop the bits in the corner that clean. And I would never be afraid of doing this in a race meeting as well, depending how I'm doing. I mean, a lot of people have said, well, if the car's going well, don't strip it down. I actually heard Mark Stiles say that. If it's going well, why strip it back down again? I'm not sure that's what they would do at Mercedes-Benz. If the car did well at the weekend, they wouldn't go back and strip it down and start again. Of course, that's a slightly different comparison. There's a Formula 1 race team, etc. But if you know what you're doing, then why wouldn't you strip it down and make sure everything's in good order? So I think it's important to get it right all the time. So as you see, I can just brushing down all the tyre dust off of everything. And then when I get to the bearings, I always spin the bearings, put my finger in it and spin it and just feel how that is. Give it a little bit of a brake cleaner, fire out any dust. And once I've done that, if it feels smooth, I'm happy that the bearing is in good order. I have to say, the bearings at Schumacher are really good. I always seem to, can't remember the last time I smashed up a bearing. Then I've got some bearing oil. Of course, Hoodie bearing oil. Again, not a team driver, just hey James, how are you, pal? Welcome along. Just dab some oil into the bearing. Do the same on both of those. And I'll try and get to that as quickly as possible and just leave them to the side so they can have a bit of a soak through. It's obviously important. I'm going to leave those shims to the side because I need to redo the track width on my car because I was having to play around at MB models last time. So I'm not going to put those in. So that's that. So then we've got back to the plate here. Start bolting this back together. The short one goes up front. Not that I'm rushing to do this, but I'm quite interested to see how long this is going to take me to do it whilst being efficient. Because all of these things, if you know how long they take you, when you're at a race meeting and things go wrong, and then you feel a bit under the pump to do something, because you're always racing to a schedule, aren't you? You've always got a time to set to get the car on the line, and if you know how long it takes you to do something, I think that's really a useful bit of information. So as I say, it's yeah, unless I take this pivot off, which I suppose I should do really, I'm not going to bother. Actually, I can get that to hang over the edge. It's very difficult to make sure this pod's flat, so that is flat. And put these back screws on. Hi Stu, do you Loctite all during? I Loctite them first time I ever did the mat, and because of that, I then don't do it next time. And whenever you Loctite something and then you go back and tighten it up again, you can feel it definitely lock a little bit tighter than it would do normally. And I've never had any of the bolts come loose again, so I'm confident that's the way. Now, conventionally, people would say that putting this pod together like this wouldn't really be under the same scrutiny of something like the X12, and it really isn't, because you can't really check it flat on the deck, which, you know, from a purist's perspective, obviously goes a little bit against the grain, but from a person that's looking to keep repeating good performance after good performance, and it's not having quite as much of the impact as it once did, it's obviously a good thing, isn't it? So that's the rear pod done. The bearings have been soaking, so I'm going to pop those back in. That one fell out. Pop it back in. I'm going to pop the screws back on. As I said to you, I'm going to re-shim all that in a little while. And when you're putting the pod, the rear axle back on, what you want to do is get yourself a X-ray. Funny enough, they do a 2mm shim that goes. I've got one. I haven't got one to hand, but they do a front shim, ride height shim, that you can slide in between. Because obviously when you're clamping this, what you don't want to do is clamp it so tight that it's not free spinning. What you want to do is get one of the shims and slide it in between the hub and the bearing, and then tighten it up. And then when you do that, you know that you've given yourself a 0.2 gap, and then it doesn't bind, because you want it to spin freely. And it's not quite free enough, that, but I'm going to reset that. I'll do that when I've got a shim out in front of me. Usually have those with me. So that's that. So that's the rear pod done. I'm going to dust off a little bit of the old tyre duster root. Push it to one side. After a race meeting, I would always strip down my motor as well, and make sure that the motor is nice and free of all tyre dust as well. I'll do that. Now I can pop that back on. fraudulent mistake. Put the rear plate on, wrong way round. Sorry about that, Tim. Hey Matthew, how you doing, pal? Welcome along. How's everyone's day been? You all been working? I haven't. I'm on furlough for a little while, so hopefully we'll be back at it in a few weeks' time, but we won't go there with that conversation. Been working all the way through since March. Good man, good man. So just fix my, obviously my on purpose mistake. So now we're going to put these back on the side links. Just locate that in. Oops. Hang over the edge. Tighten up from the bottom. I'm just hanging the rear of the car over the edge of the, just hanging it over the rear of the edge of the worktop here, and just putting a wrench underneath, and then from the top, and just tightening up the side links. So that's that done. So that's the rear pod done. Then we'll come across to the cross brace, and this is where it all starts to get a bit mucky, isn't it? This is not a job that anybody particularly likes doing. What I really like about this Schumacher car are these inset bolts. What centre and side grease have you been running, Stu? So I've been, last time I was at MB Models, I took a couple of weeks off, would you believe, before lockdown. Nicely done. And I went up to MB Models, and I ended up on 60k down the middle, and I was running 5k on the sides, and I was going up through the springs, ended up on the gold, bounce between gold and nickel. So I think that was just a nice blend for me. So that's that. That's the cross brace done. Just giving that a dust down. I think 2 stringers. Put that back on there. There we go, that's that done. Now I'll take these off. Disgusting things. Don't know about you, but I absolutely bloody hate the oil and ugh. Not a fan, but it's what it is, right? Give that a dust down, hold that off, and then I've got myself a tub of brake cleaner. I'm going to fire that in there. Do the sides first. Just spin them around. Hey Matthew, how are you? Who's not running at the podcast series, the first one? Excuse me for not remembering everyone's names and who's running and who isn't. Anyone here that's online tonight that's not running at the the first one at MB Models? If so, why? Why are you not running? Disgusting. So that's that. That's those done. James Eves. Alright, so it's not too far for you from Scotland to Leeds, right? I mean, it's, oh, mind you, what are your, yeah, we won't talk about your restrictions and stuff, but hopefully you can make it. So I'm now putting 6k in, 5k in the sides. Put that in there. And doing this, just double check that that's all nicely filled up. Matthew, have you let me know that you're not making it? I can't remember. If you have, great. So there's the silence. Yeah, okay, understood that, James. No worries, mate. And then that. And then there. There now. They feel consistent, both sides. And I can push that on. And that. Lost the bolt. Lost the bolt. Typical, isn't it? That's that. It will show up in a minute. Promise. So we've got Mr. Murray on. He's looking if there's still space. Yeah. Andy, can you send me an email? I'll pop you in. Love to have you there, mate. A few people have had Matt Lax inquiring today. I think we've only got a few spots left, so I'm going to do it purely by email with entries and stuff. So from that perspective, just keeps it fair for everyone. So if you are interested, drop me an email, Andy, on the website address. So I'm just doing the same with the center damper. So Kent Matthews, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're only Jan and Feb, don't you? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Great. So 60k is going in the center here. Oh dear. Never push too hard. Okay. Always just check to see that it's nice and consistent with the damper. tissue. Ah, I knew the bolt turn up. There she is. There she is. Put the rear spring on. After I've done a rebuild, I tend to not bother with the droop and all that kind of stuff until I've got fresh tyres on and all that kind of stuff. So then I've got the motor back in. Now putting the post back in. So, done. So that's the rear end of the car done. Put those to one side. All going fairly smoothly so far. I don't know how long we've been going. 6:15. Okay, it's been going 30 minutes. Okay, so that's a decent amount of time. Right, so on to the front end. On to the front end. Now when it comes to 12 scale and front ends, crikey, the way they've gone with these springs now where they don't really compress, marvellous, isn't it? However, it is a slightly murky business. All this oil swimming around everywhere. At that point, I get my can of spray, I fire the tip in it, say a small prayer, give it a squeeze, making sure nothing gets covered. Like blowing your nose. Take the shims off, make sure I don't lose those. Do the same the other side. I suppose in a perfect world I should really take these off, really. Thinking about it, I've never really done that before, to be honest. Thinking about it, it would make sense to, wouldn't it? Such a low maintenance car, really is. I don't think I've ever, not sure I've taken these pins off that much. That's what's so good about it, isn't it? For so many people. It really does. I was just watching my self-indulging myself, my run against Mark Jewett at Chesterfield. And both cars just looked absolutely on point. Really good fun. Nothing like running 12 scale when the car is all set and consistent. Now I don't know. I've done a lot of running with the E3, and I've only compressed one spring, and so I treated myself to a new set. To give you some sort of idea, with the old X-Ray, I was running 0.18s on the front. I reckon I would go through about 5, 6, 7 sets over the weekend. Everyone would say, "Oh, just shim it out" and all that kind of stuff, but I don't want more shims, different compression rates on one side compared to the other. So hence why I never did that, and I always started with fresh fresh front springs. But these springs on here, and obviously the the X12 and the A12, they've all gone to these 4mm springs now, which I think is, again, for the perishables, which were your springs, I think it's absolutely fantastic. So, Matt, would you replace the side tube and centre oils at any point during the race weekend? I almost do it every run, Matt. I definitely wouldn't go more than 2 runs without replacing it. Mr. Murray said something. I fill up the kingpin until it squirts out the holes, then spread it. I then drop 1.5 dry into the kingpin on its own weight to set the amount of oil consistently. Helps keeps it clean. Okay, that's interesting. So I do the same. I would squeeze it through the top, but I've never dropped a pin, a driver down it. So I'll do that in a second, Andy, and hopefully I'll get it right and I'll do it the way you've just advised. That's brilliant stuff. Always good to have the designer of the car on. Thanks for being here, Andy. So. Put that on. Yeah, notice if you don't do it, it squirts out in the first run and makes a mess. Yeah. How often do you redo your front end? Andy, would you do it a lot during the race weekend? I think it's pretty important. So here's my 5K. Actually, excuse me. I was on 10K. So squirting down out all the holes. That's what I would do normally. And so what you're saying is drop a driver down it at its own weight. The driver must be too big. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Like that. El Brilliante, Mr. Murray. Shims on. That's a great little tip. Oh, yeah, so much less glute coming out at the bottom. Brilliant stuff. Yeah, That's amazing. It used to be once or twice a run with the oil only on the outside. It used to be once or twice a run. Okay, that's good. Shims to the top of spring 2 so they don't rub up the kingpin and score. I don't know what you mean by that. Putting the shims at the bottom, because that has a different effect to putting them at the top, James. Put them at the top, it'll change the axle height. That's that. Okay, cool. So every 1 or 2 runs, Andy would change and regroup the front end. Good stuff. That's what I do. And that, my pedigree chums, is a complete rebuild and reset of your E3. No, I put them on the bottom below the hub, James. And that's a reset. Put them back. Yeah, yeah. So having a moment here. Get me back in the wrong house. There we go. Great. Super. What's that? I believe I can't. Who's excited to get back racing? Oh, what? Going to be streaming it live, so you can get some interviews. Be great fun. Be great fun. Do you measure the steering lock angle, Stu? Yes, I do. How much inside wheel lock do you run if you do it on the setup session? I run inside 15 and outside 30. That's where I start anyway, and then I sort of adjust from there. I've never gone more than that. Always come down if I'm going to go anywhere. I think that's the thing that in the US, racing over there, that's something that they're really on top of, they're always in their setup sheets on their cars, they always talk about wheel angles, and it's something that I've not really seen that much on setup sheets in the UK until you guys started doing it. I'd seen it on all the setup sheets from the US on their cars. I haven't really seen it on the cars in the UK. So again, another good insight when you're fortunate enough to go away and race with different people from different backgrounds and stuff. So, and I think from a setup perspective, and it's certainly something I was speaking to Matt Blowers about, I think having these routines of what you do to your car when you come back off of a run is absolutely crucial, because it means that when you put your car down on the track, it's the same every time. That is something that has absolutely revolutionised my racing, because when you've got the car the same every time, it's absolutely fundamental that that it feels the same when you run it down the straight, round the corners. And I think when so if I was to put that down on the track, Andy, feel free to chirp in. I give myself 2, 3, 4 laps of, obviously not necessarily at a national, but even in a run, I would give myself 2, 3, 4 laps to ease my way in, whereas previously I used to just be full beans, flat out. And I think that comes with the knowledge that the car is with you. You then can push it a little bit harder, but you go out there and warm up over the first few laps and you give it a whack, all of a sudden you're sort of starting on the back foot. So I think it's really important that the car goes down the same each time, and you feel like you've got a car that's going to be consistent and confident with you and for you, should I say. So do I prefer spool or diff? Spool 100%. Even in low traction now, a spool is every bit as drivable. I think you have to drive slightly different. You have to drive slightly different and not be so quick to let off the throttle. The minute you start letting off the throttle, you really start to unbalance the car, and that's when you get a bit of wheel lift, and that's where you can unsettle the car and it starts to feel a bit squirrely, shall I say. So I 100% prefer a spool. So don't go running a diff. We do the same yet. So Andy Murray says we do the same. I think it's one of the most important things we've set to have set up correct. 30 degrees maximum inside, and then go down from there for a smoother, easier car for more open tracks. Yeah, absolutely agree, Andy. I think front end is so important, and previously with those old cars, and how they were running, so hard to keep it consistent. Now you've got them so much more consistent, and you can then start to have more of a chance of fiddling with stuff and making it go faster. Yeah, that's great, James. I think spools are the way forwards. Not for everyone. I think a lot of people have kind of gone off it, but I think that's just more the car that they're running. They don't like the spool rather than the actual spool itself. Listen, I've taken up lots of everyone's time today on these live feeds. I'm going to be doing lots of them. I just want to keep doing my RC stuff, and if I can help people out along the way, then that'd be fantastic. If there's anything you want me to cover, very happy to do that. And if there's a certain time that works better for people, I'm happy to do that as well. Going to try and get a few people on as well. Andy, it'd be great to have you on. We can do a side-by-side interview and talk about stuff. So we've got a podcast coming out as well fairly soon. As I say, thanks very much for being here tonight, and I hope you learned a little bit, and see you on the other side. All the best.